Marina is the CEO of Create and Cultivate, a media and events company with a wild story. It was acquired for $22 million, and then Marina and the original founder, Jacqueline, they famously bought their company back. Now, as CEO, Marina is focused on scaling the company to its next era, and she's got to use smart marketing and social media strategies to get there. Marina, welcome to Bossy.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah. Okay, so you just hosted a massive event. I see you. I've been seeing you on social media, like grinding, getting it done. Tell us about the event you just hosted. So my friend who works in advertising was telling me about how many businesses brag about never spending any money on marketing. And I get it. We all love saving money, but not investing in paid ads isn't really a flex. The real secret to getting ahead isn't about saving money. It's about getting creative with how you spend it. Lately, I've been looking into Amazon ads, and it's pretty incredible. You can reach the right people by leveraging Amazon's trillions of browsing, shopping, and streaming signals. And it's not just for businesses that sell directly on Amazon. So any small or medium business can create ads that show up on Prime Video or Twitch or Fire TV. Plus, there's not a minimum spend required. So not only can you get your ads on the big screen, but you get to access their proprietary brand and campaign metrics, meaning that your campaign results detailing how streaming TV ads are driving growth, and you get the data that you need to optimize your placements. Check this out at advertising.amazon.com/start now and learn how your business can gain the edge with Amazon ads.
Yeah, it's so funny. And we were just saying this before we started recording. You caught me at such a perfect time because the event has happened and I have so much to talk about, right? Versus for about 20 months since I bought the business, we've been saying we're going to launch the world's largest festival for women in business. We're bringing this to life. We're bringing this to life. But we had nothing yet, right? You just say that you're going to do it and you just have to build it and hope it works. And so, we just wrapped up. It was in July in LA. We had 2,000 attendees, 154 sponsors. Yeah. It was 2 days. We had Doechii as the headliner. It was just unbelievable.
You had Doechii. How was the Doechii performance? I love her so much when she's like, put that motherfucking money in my motherfucking hand. I die.
I had these heavy extensions that were just going everywhere while I was dancing.
Whipping your hair.
My presenting sponsors were behind me and it's everybody was just having the best time. She was amazing in person. She was just so real and herself, and she was amazing. And it was amazing to have that be our first festival and have her as woman of the year and such an icon right now.
It's it's a cool celebration of her, but cool celebration of you that you put this together. And I'm imagining her performance is towards the end. So you're celebrating the fact that we did this thing and we did it. What is the story of how you got Doechii to perform at an event that you're hosting and at your conference?
Yeah, it's funny. So I've never really worked with talent much, right? And so this was a new world for me. And thinking of a performer is something that Create and Cultivate has never done, right? And so for a long time, we were who are we going to get? Who are we going to get? And you forget that these are real people that you could just hire to perform. And so anyways, I really wanted Doechii. It was really hard to work with the agency just because it's hard to secure someone.
She busy, girl.
She's busy, but I wanted her before the nomination and the Grammy, which I feel has to count for something. Okay. It's such a big deal. And so, when I saw her win the Grammy, I was damn, but also damn, this is so good for her, but also it's terrifying for me.
Did you already know when she won that Grammy, did you already have her signed up? I think I saw this post that you did on social media and it was right before the conference and you were showing you signing paperwork for Doechii to come, which means that you had been promoting this thing for a while and it things were in conversations, but maybe not everything was locked in.
Yeah, so people don't realize that you sign a contract. One party signs a contract often for talent, and the other party doesn't, right? And you're at risk, right? So for an event, you say like, hey, we want this talent to sign. And they're like, amazing. You work with the agency. I had a good friend of mine, Mary Seats, and Alex Wolf, who knew Doechii personally. She was like, I really want to do this. This is such an amazing event. Like, she was like gung ho, but it doesn't matter. It's a business at the end of the day. And so you got to go through the agency, you got to go through the agent, and you got to negotiate like this whole entire thing. So it really took like about 6 months to get to the contract phase. By the time we got into contract phase, we signed, we're ready to go. She doesn't really no talent really have to sign until the day of the event, but you have to
What?
pay. It's crazy. So if you know me, like, that's not how I do business, and it's also not how my nervous system is set up. And so it's just like, it was crazy. But yeah, musical performers, like, their contracts, they're artists, but like their contracts are 100% like very protective of them, and like they get paid no matter what, and it's just kind of, you trust, and like you
Wow.
can't go into a contract with trust, right? That's not how, that's not why contracts
That's
exist.
crazy. Okay, so
It's
you
great.
have to then promote this whole thing. And I want to talk a little bit about like the business of hosting events too, because like there's a
Yeah.
whole business here and that's part of your business that like, so you pay a guest to come. Maybe there's some speakers that you don't pay, but some that you do. Is that right? And then you have ticket
Yeah.
revenue. Like, break this down for me.
Yeah. Okay. So, Create and Cultivate obviously is massive, and it has a massive reach. We do a lot of work to make sure the right people are in the room. And so
Yeah.
a lot of the times is the speakers that we have, one, don't ever ask to be paid.
Yeah.
But they do have something that they want to promote. Right. And so it's like, it's a good initiative for them. It's usually a marketing play, whether it's a book or a new product, and their target audience is who we have in the room. So
Right.
it makes sense so much for them to come, right? Other talent like have specific guidelines. Like for Sierra, they wanted like 10-1 to activate and do this mixology class, and it was
Okay.
amazing. And so you kind of figure out like what's of value for the attendees and what's of value for the speakers, and what type of speakers do we want. We always try to get people that like you just don't see on every single stage, right? That's like the
Yeah.
goal of Create and Cultivate, but also the goal of events. Like every event person should try to get new speakers so that people can learn from new people. But yeah, so like you promote these people, and at the end of the day, and it's like, it's in our like language of like policies and all that stuff, we're going to do our best to get these speakers, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, God forbid they get sick, their flight gets canceled, like anything could happen. And so we're going to do our best. And like, again, everything is contracted, but at the end of the day, if something happens, everybody's kind of shit out of luck, which really sucks. But that's like the risk that you take with
Yeah.
events.
We were saying this, we were talking a little bit before we started filming here, and you were saying that like, I was telling you that there's a level of confidence that I see that you have, and that probably is required to put on an event at this scale. Like, how many people were at this event?
2000.
Okay. So like to put together like a 2,000 person event with like huge names, huge performers, there's a level of confidence and like, I got this energy that one must need to have. Do you feel like you have that, or maybe it doesn't feel that way internally?
Yeah, it's funny because I was saying it's like, it's less of confidence and more of like delusion, right? I am like so certain that we're going to have this unbelievable event, and that we're going to build this, and we're going to get these speakers. But I do think that that confidence or delusion comes from proof. Like, there is a need for this. There's a need for this event, right? There's
Yeah.
no large scale event that is a blend of a business conference and a festival that changes the business landscape for women that exists.
Yeah.
That does not exist, right?
Yeah.
You have South by, you have CES, you have Adweek, you have these massive events, but they're not directly focused on women,
Yeah.
and different stages of women, right? And so I say all that to say there's a white space, there's a need for this event.
But a lot of people are working on projects that are white space and there's a need for it, and they don't have that level of confidence about it. Like what is the difference
Yeah.
between delusion and confidence in your mind?
Delusion is like, you're going to do it no matter what, and you're just going to you're going to like, you can think as big as possible. Confidence for me comes from proof. Like, I know that Create and Cultivate has had these massive speakers before. I know that, like, I need to find proof in the
Ah,
content. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it is. That actually is really good. I can see that distinction in my own life, right? Like, I feel like I have a high level of confidence that is relatively new in my life. And it comes from me being like, I know that I'm going to figure this shit out. Like, in some
Right.
way, if something goes wrong, I know that I have figure outing skills and I will use them to figure the thing out, which is different,
Yeah.
I think, than delusion. Like, I recently did this activity with my friends where we were like, what is a big delusional goal that you have? And like, we were all writing in the group chat, and it helped me actually see some things that, like, even though I'm confident, I didn't know this. Like, I wrote like, oh, I would have like a fashion brand and a fashion company, and people like that are like avant-garde and crazy, and people who were like going to the Met Gala, like they call me for this ridiculous thing. And I was like, oh, I want to design clothes. So I think I had confidence, but I didn't have delusion in that scenario, and I can see how those are like different.
Yeah. And for me, it's like, again, I know that I can figure anything out because I've figured a lot out already, right? Like in just like my personal life. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
I got this far. I can produce this event. You know what I mean? Like I can have
Totally.
this massive party.
Totally. And I think it's like really common for entrepreneurs who are in, I would say, years like 1 through, I don't know, what do you think? 4. I don't know. You still be struggling in your head after that. But like the first 5 years for sure are like, you don't have enough proof points of like
Yeah.
seeing yourself, and maybe it's like in your career overall, but like seeing yourself figure it out. And then I think like there's a turning point and you're like, I've screwed something up and figured it out, or like, turned it around before I could do this.
Yeah. But do you ever feel like there's this, I always say there's like bliss in the naiveness. Like when you're just starting out,
Oh yeah.
you're kind of like, oh, I can do anything. Like, I don't know. There's two sides of it. Like, sure. But it's like when you're like a first year in entrepreneurship or even the first month, you're like, I'm going to build this. I'm going to do this. And there's nothing like
Yeah.
that. There's so much beauty in just being like naive and not knowing all of the things that could go wrong.
Or having
You know,
that many people really watching you, like you feel like a lot of people are watching you, but it's not like, oh, I have this massive email newsletter and all these followers and people following me. We sound like, quick sidebar, we sound like old lady entrepreneurs who are like, back in my day in years 1 through 2. That's what we sound like.
100%.
But it's
100%. But
real.
I will tell you. So Aisha Curry said something on stage about like celebrity faced brands or brands that have like a face to it.
Yeah.
And she said that the room for error is so tiny. And I think that goes back to what you just said of like, as you get bigger, right? As your email list gets bigger, as Create and Cultivate's brand gets bigger, our room for error is like this small, right?
Because
Which
people
is
will talk
interesting.
about you on Twitter, on threads. They will tear
Just
you
very
down if you have
interesting.
one mistake.
And it's interesting because like I always laugh. I'm like, I'm new here. Like I just bought the company less than 2 years ago, right? And so like I'm like, can I have a little bit more room for error just because like I'm learning? But it is so true when you have a brand that like is well known and is larger and your email list, again, like more problems, but like more money, more problems kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
I totally get that. But like I think society gives very, very little room for error, which I do
Yeah.
think can eat away at the entrepreneur's confidence for sure.
Events I know are like notoriously hard to produce, and I just know this from friends. I have friends who produce events, and like you see this big shiny thing out front, and then when you have like the conversation in the group chat or kind of one-on-one, it's like, yeah, like this was like the first year that we broke even, and they've been doing this event for a long time. Or like events are known for being like not profitable. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that? Like, has that been something that's a priority for you to make the event profitable? Is it like we'll do that later? How do you think about that?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So I, as a previous solopreneur, I always made sure that my business was profitable, right? But when I
Yeah.
say profitable, it's just like a couple $100,000, like just like little tiny things that I'm trying to like make because I was living off of what I was making as an entrepreneur, as a solopreneur.
Yeah.
VC backed businesses are very different and they take a lot of risk and they take a lot of chances. And like you actually can lose a little bit of money early on because you're building something bigger.
Totally.
That was hard for me to understand. Like, what do you mean lose money? Why would we do something? And even like now, there's opportunities that come up, and something that I'm working through is like, how do you say yes to things when there's not direct dollars signed to it, right? What's the
Yeah.
benefit?
But all these
And
big
what
companies, the Ubers, the Airbnbs, like all these companies, they have losses for a long time. No one's bothered about it because that's the model.
Yeah, exactly. And so when I first did my first board meeting deck, like we were supposed to lose money on the festival, and everybody was like, "Great, like let's lose money." Like, it's a crazy concept because events, to your point, they don't automatically make money, especially large scale events.
Yeah.
They're not traditionally supposed to make money right away. Because I am a bit crazy, I was like, can we do something different? Like, how can we do this a little bit different? And so, although we're VC backed, we're very scrappy because we're still a very small team. We are still considered a startup, right? And so, I was much more scrappier with my negotiation with like vendors and venues. We got more scrappier and flexible with our like sponsorship packages and made things a little bit more custom. 154 sponsors is a lot, right?
It's a lot.
It's a lot of partners, and that's fully paid. There's marketing trades in there. There's in kind, like it's like you name it. We were able to do it, which allowed the business to be profitable, allowed the event to be profitable.
Can you go back a little bit and break down just like a little bit about like what you just listed a bunch of types of sponsorship packages, but I think if someone's listening to this and they're not familiar, like you just breezed by it really fast. Can you talk about like what some of those formats are? Because you're generating revenue from tickets, but also from brands.
Yes. So a lot of people don't realize that you don't really make a lot of money off of ticket sales. That's not the point, right? And truly, the more sponsors we get, the goal is that it decreases the ticket price. That's the whole point of it, right? So it allows for attendees to come at a lower cost. But there's a few different ways to think about sponsorship. But before you think about sponsorship, it's important, at least how I do it, is to understand the cost of the event. So what is like your fixed cost? How much is it going to actually cost you to have this event? What do you need? You need food, you need security, you need so much. You need a venue, you need
Can I
AV.
ask you how much this event costs?
Oh,
Can
God,
you give me a
every event,
range?
the festival, yeah, sure. The festival was a little bit under like 3.5 million.
Okay.
All in. Yeah, so 3.5 million. I will say that it should have cost us more, but we were very, very scrappy in the
Yeah, you're like,
sense of
I
like,
negotiated those deals.
yeah, like we negotiated a lot. But yeah, so 3.5 is the cost of the event. So just knowing that,
Yeah.
right?
And then you can go to sponsors to then be like, okay, this is what we need to cover.
Exactly. Well, not even that. It's like, okay, what are you selling, right? Food is something that you have to have, right? So maybe that's where you negotiate, and you have some like room for flexibility in terms of partnering up. Coffee, everyone needs coffee. Is it people like, and coffee is very
You
expensive. I don't
love
think
coffee.
yeah, I love my coffee. But like beverages. So thinking through like, how do we keep the attendee happy? So we always start with like, what does the person attending need to have the best experience? Those are the sponsors that we can be flexible with or like have like exclusivity or bigger partnerships with. Then we have, okay, what are the other experiences that we want to offer? The festival is created to provide tools, resources, and like connections to women. So
Right.
we need that, right? We need the credit card business. We need Gusto that is going to teach them how to do payroll and trainings. We need like, okay, how do you monetize digitally? Great, we have Kajabi. And so we partner up with people really intentionally. And for us, like for an event, everybody sells differently. We sell by space. So it's like a 10 by 10, a 10 by 20, and it varies depending on like what we offer them in between. So like
Like a
I
10 by
can't be
10, like booth space is what you mean? Got it.
exactly.
Okay.
And
Great.
then it's like, and that varies. It's not like, oh, that's like $10,000. I can't just give you a number because it depends then on what the sponsor needs. So does the
Yeah.
sponsor want two people to attend? Does the sponsor want like a digital component? And so we create these like custom packages. And so similar to how we create a custom package for an attendee, we create a custom package for the sponsors. And so everybody feels very like that like they win, but it's like this organic meetup in person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's
So
my favorite
it's
kind of sales is a custom structure where you essentially first go and you ask them what is it that they want and are looking for.
yeah.
And then you go back and you build the deck around that so that it feels like, oh, that was exactly what we wanted. And you're like, yeah, duh, because I listened in the first meeting because I made something custom for you. I think that's like the best way to launch something and build something. I love it.
100%. And it's interesting, like, if you ever hear like VCon or Fanatics Fest, like anybody talk
Yeah.
about their events, right? These events cost 15 million plus to produce. Traditionally, sometimes they make money, sometimes they don't. I don't think Fanatics Fest has made money in a long time, and that isn't their model. Their model is like, it's more of like a marketing play. And so I think like just understanding what are the different options that you have for yourself, and also like what are your business goals. For me, sure, if we wanted to lose money, that could have been a goal, but like, what if we tried to make a little bit of money, even if it was
Yeah.
like $5,000? I mean,
Yeah.
but like, why not, kind of thing, you
I
know?
love that. What advice do you have for entrepreneurs who want to have big brands sponsor something with them? It could be an event, it could be social media content, like, but they want to get like big brands to sponsor them.
Yeah, just know what the brand is looking for and see if your audience aligns. I think that's the one thing that people are like, oh, I have this big following. And it's like, okay, cool. But who is the audience that you have?
Mm,
And are they engaged? For us, even when we work with influencers or creators, we have worked with people in the past that have millions of audience, millions of followers, but they don't convert, right?
yeah. Yeah.
They're not signing up to sponsor posts, they're not buying. And then you have the micro influencers that are killing it because their audience just trusts what they're doing and what they're saying, and so they convert. So if you're looking to partner up with big brands, just make sure that your audience is comfortable with that, and that the
Mm.
brand is looking to target that audience. So maybe it could be moms, it could be, maybe you have a Gen Z community. It depends on, just understanding your audience is going
And
to be the
pick a
biggest thing.
brand that's aligned to that. But also, I think that you have, like, I'm curious about how people can then find the brand and reach out to the brand. Because I think you have a
Mm.
media, do you have a media background? Did I make that up?
Yeah. So yes, I worked at Yahoo, and then Yahoo News and Tumblr for a long time. But
Yeah.
reaching out to brands, it's funny. I think people think that like there is a database. So we use Apollo. Have you ever heard of it?
I don't know. Actually, I do know, Paul, like for finding like emails and contacts.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So you
Yes.
find email contacts and you just do cold outreaches. We do that all day.
What percentage of these deals that you got came from a cold contact versus a warm, if you had to guess?
Mhm. So that's a hard question only because the brand has been around for a really long time. And so although it's a cold outreach,
Mm-hmm.
so maybe I would say like 80% is a cold outreach, it wasn't too cold because they know what Create and Cultivate is. So
Got
that
it.
helped.
You've
Um,
built that
so
reputation.
exactly. So it's just a little bit different than like a traditional cold that they've never heard of you before.
Yeah. Okay. Social media and marketing technologies has changed a lot in recent years, and the changes have significantly shifted how businesses reach target audiences and grow. So I'm curious, how have you leveraged social media to not only grow the brand, but also communicate the new chapter of your brand to your community?
Yeah, yeah. So we had to understand kind of where the business stood from a marketing perspective in the beginning, right? So like everybody should do some sort of audit on their audience, who
Yeah.
they are, how many people follow them, who's engaging, like where are they from, what, like just understanding the like foundation and where you're starting. I
Yeah.
think a lot of times people try to create marketing plans without knowing where they're starting. They're just focused on where they're going. And so you just try to understand like where is that starting point. So for us, social media is our biggest driver. Instagram, stories, and then newsletter. We have about a little under 600,000 subscribers in our newsletter, and they're very, very engaged. So those three alone support, or those two, social media and newsletter, those help us so much when we're trying to understand how we want to target them. Our audience has grown, right? So we started in 2011. And so she's now has her own business. Maybe she's like a VP at a company. Maybe she's a mom. We also have tapped into the younger audience. And so for us, our marketing strategy, it speaks to different phases of their life. So you'll
Mm,
see different like content that might be really relevant to the Gen Zers or Gen Alpha. Then you'll see content that's talking about a specific phase that a woman is in, or a person is in, that is in their like millennial generation X stage, right? And so trying to understand like who's going to like relate to what, and that's how we market it. We have different events for different audiences, and so on and so forth.
How are you letting people know about like events that you have coming up or like communicating to people? Is that mainly newsletter and using like a specific marketing technology for that? Is it mainly social media? Like, how are you communicating? Like, here's what's coming up.
Yeah, it's a blend of website. So we use our website obviously for everything. And then newsletter, they always find out first. So we use MailChimp for our newsletter. And they always find out first through that. We have a lot of segments. So if anybody that's listening is like, I have this massive newsletter. If it's not segmented out, it's really hard to like actually see the value of it.
Yeah.
And so we segment out. And so if we're going to, Georgia, for example, for our 7-figure founder retreat, we'll email everybody in Atlanta or Georgia or like whatever that email list is closer. Same with New York, LA. So we
Does
do
that mean
that,
you
and
like
then
survey people when they join the newsletter so you have this demographic information?
yeah, and sometimes your Mailchimp can pull it automatically from like
Aha.
where the IP is.
Smart. Okay. And then I want to go back to your brand experience because you were working at big companies before. Can you tell me how you're applying your big brand marketing experience to a smaller, more intimate brand like Create and Cultivate? Like, I'm curious what the key is to making it feel authentic.
I think that the value of me working at Yahoo, Yahoo News, and Tumblr. So those are the three properties that I managed throughout my years at Yahoo. It allows me to understand the language that some of these brands are saying, right? Which I
Yeah.
think is a learning curve. When I started at Yahoo, although I had a marketing degree, I didn't know half of the words they were using. I had no digital
Yeah.
background.
Yeah.
And so I remember my manager had hired 3 new people, me being one of them. None of us had digital marketing backgrounds.
Yeah.
I think he was like just testing it out and it worked, which was great. But he printed out like a cheat sheet of all of the different like abbreviations of things.
The
Um,
acronyms.
Literally, I'm like, I don't know, like talk like a normal human. Like
That's
literally that,
hilarious. There's
like
this
even like
video that I love so much, and it's like these two people and they're beatboxing and they're like beatboxing corporate jargon of like, we gotta like run it up the flagpole and we've gotta like just like all of the different like weird things and like acronyms and weird words that people use in corporate. So you're saying
it's
in media, there's like this all these specific terms that you had to learn.
It's the worst. It's literally like, what are you saying? So yeah, it's like even RFP. Like I didn't know what an RFP was. Like what it's like
Yeah.
here we're RFPing for this. I'm like, what does that mean? What do you want me to do with this? So it's like I think that experience I was able to take in, and so I can understand these conversations. I also it's interesting. I would say my experience as an attendee of Create and Cultivate helps me as a CEO more than my experience at Yahoo uh,
Aha.
in a corporate, because I look at things from an attendee lens of like, well, what does she want? What is she looking for in her career? Right. I've kind of been through the phases of what our target audience is. And so I want to create experiences and provide access to what I needed at the time.
So wait, I'm kind of hearing you say that your experience working for these big companies, that helped you with the like B2B side of your business more
Exactly.
so than like the it's maybe like I guess the businesses, business owners and women are there too, but it helped you with the B2B side is what I'm hearing you say, getting
Totally.
sponsors.
And 100%. But I also think from B2B and also creating the ideas of what sponsors should do, right?
Right.
Like, why should Chase Inc. do a marketplace? Well, because our attendees really likes to shop, really likes to see new activations and want to be introduced to these brands, right? I know that because I was an attendee, but I also know that because, and so I can like include that from a consumer experience and also the B2B like conversation with sponsors.
Yeah. Okay, what is one non-negotiable marketing or social media strategy that you're really leaning on right now to drive the next phase of growth for your company?
It's not even a strategy, it's more of like the direction that I'm always giving is just assume this is everyone's first time seeing it, right? And I think sometimes people post a couple things, maybe it's a campaign, and they assume everybody sees it. And so their next post isn't as informative or doesn't hit all of the points as the first post. The first
Mm,
post of a launch always does well, right? It has the date, it has the location, it has all of the information, who it's for, why, all of that stuff. But then your second post, your third post doesn't, because you just assume someone has already seen it. And so
yeah.
our strategy is just making sure that every post has the key information, which seems like common sense, but it's not. And so like has the key information. So that way the algorithm can keep pushing it out. And also like SEO, that really helps. It makes sure that like when someone's seeing it, whether new or this is their second, third, fourth time, it just resonates more. So that's the biggest like I would say like non-negotiable for us. Assume nobody has seen this before. Make sure all of the information is there.
And also
Over
social
and
media has changed so much. Like we were before in this era of social media, and now we're in more of like interest media. Social media being like you were connecting with your friends and the platform showed you posts from the people that you follow and your friends. And now like most of what we're seeing, unless you turn it off, is like a suggested post from someone that you don't necessarily know, and the algorithm just thinks you're going to be interested in. And so we're now in more of interest media, which means that if you've posted this before, they probably have not seen it before because you're showing up to a stranger.
100%, 100%. And I don't know, like, if people have gotten like any milestones in their life. I'll talk about just me personally.
Yeah.
Like when I was pregnant and had my son, when I was getting married, or when I bought a house, my algorithm changed based off of that. It was the craziest thing. And it's because your interests change throughout, right? And so
Yep.
if you search a couple things or if you like a couple things, your explore page is all of that, you know? And
Yeah.
then it
To
changes
the point
as
where
you
we're all convinced that it can like hear us through the phone. And we're like, can you hear me? I was just having that conversation. Really, you probably just searched for it.
100%. And so I think that's like something to remember too, of like, what is your person? What is your target audience? Who are you trying to reach? What are they interested in? And what are they looking up? Because making sure your content aligns with that is going to be very important.
How do you think about like building your community versus like growing the audience, like having more followers and audience count? Like those are things that are kind of often hard to balance and juggle. How do you balance those? Are they both important or not really?
Oh my God, they're so important. I think sometimes we think through like we want to grow, we want to grow, we want to grow. People forget that you have to nurture. Like, what is the value that you're continuing to provide to these people, right?
Yeah.
So we do it in a few different ways. Like one of the most obvious ways is how do we offer like incentives or like uh I can't think of the word right now, but like thank yous to our audience, right? So you've bought a ticket, great. Maybe it's a discount to a future ticket. Maybe it's a first access to something. Like, how do we make them feel very valued and special? Because we can't do what we're doing without them. Like that's just a
Yeah.
fact.
Do you
Right?
do that
We
on
need
social? You do it through email, some other marketing
to
tool?
yeah, so email is usually the way to go when it's just for our nurturing, right? You're on our email list, you've attended, you're segmented out, meaning that you've already attended this event, you have a tag that says you've attended. We're going to email you a special code, making sure that you have that and making sure that they have all of like, again, first access, especially to things that sell out. We never want someone to feel like, oh, like I couldn't go and I've been going for years. So making them like get that first access, providing value to them. So special things that may be like, again, codes that maybe a sponsor is like, hey, we would love to give this group of people. It's like, great, we have their audience for it.
Right.
And so nurturing is so important. You cannot forget about the people that are like die hard for you and also been supporting you always. But then growing is also really important, and growing in the sense of like partnering up with people that have a different audience than you, right? Like we're activating at an event called Future Proof, and it's a finance event. And so for us, it's like we don't have that audience. We just don't. They're
Yeah.
older. They usually aren't entrepreneurs. Half of our entrepreneurs, half work for someone else. It's like, how do we get that audience? Because we know that they would value from our events. And so activating in different areas to grow is going to be really important as long as it's a different like growth audience.
Yeah. Girl, this has been so fun having this conversation with you. I have one more question for you. Now that this big event that you hosted is over, do you get to rest?
No.
I've
You know
never
what's
seen
funny?
you rest. You be going.
When am I going to take a break? No, it's like it's like it becomes real now because I don't know what's harder, and I'm curious what you think and curious what your audience think. Is it harder to do the first event where no one has any expectations, or is it harder to do the second, right? Is it harder for your first launch or the second launch? Like, I
Mm,
don't know. Part of me is like, people expect bigger, and I want to give them that. And so no, there's no resting, but I do have like very good boundaries in place, and I take care of myself, which is really good. But I'm definitely in my just like relentless hustling era, and I love it. I love it here.
this is inspiring AF. Thank you so much for being on the show.